the watcher in the dark. It was a freezing winter night, the kind where the cold seeps into your bones no matter how many layers you wear. The streets were alive with drunken laughter and the distant echoes of music spilling from bars lining the downtown strip. I had just finished my late shift at Hendrick's Tavern, a dimly lit, upscale bar where I had worked for nearly 3 years. I was used to late nights, used to the strangers that drifted in and out of the place, used to the feeling of being watched. But that night, something felt different. I was tired, my feet ached, and all I wanted was a drink before heading home. So, I did what I often did. I walked a few blocks to Riley's, a bar where off-duty servers gathered to unwind. The place was packed, and I squeezed my way to the counter, ordering a whiskey neat, savoring the brief moment of solitude. Then, something, or rather, someone, caught my eye. A man sat alone at the far end of the bar, half hidden in the shadows. He was polished, composed, almost unnervingly still. Something about him tugged at my memory. He looked familiar, not in the way an old friend does, but in the way something you've glimpsed 1,000 times does without ever really seeing it. I studied him for a moment, and then it clicked. He was a regular at Hendrick's Tavern, always sitting alone at the bar, always nursing the same drink. A quiet observer. He never made small talk, never caused a scene, never seemed particularly noteworthy. And yet, here he was, in the same place as me, on the one night I decided to step out of routine. Coincidence? Maybe. As I passed by him, I gave a polite nod, the way you acknowledge someone you recognize but don't really know. A casual greeting, nothing more. "Ah, finally. I was wondering when you'd say hello," he murmured. Something in his voice made my skin prickle. It wasn't friendly, nor was it flirtatious. It was something else. Something colder. I hesitated, caught off guard. He lifted his glass in a slow, deliberate motion and took a sip before adding, "I've been watching you for a long time." I forced a chuckle. "Well, I guess that's the nature of my job, always being on display," I said lightly, already regretting acknowledging him. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "No, you don't understand. I've been watching you for years." My stomach tightened. The music thumped around us, the crowd buzzed, but I felt like we had been pulled into a separate, quieter reality. I wanted to walk away, but my feet wouldn't move. Something in his eyes pinned me there. He leaned in slightly. "I know your routine," he continued, his voice almost lost beneath the hum of the bar. "You take the same route to work every day. You stop at that little coffee shop on 8th Street. You sit at the corner table by the window." A cold sweat broke out on my back. I had never spoken to this man before, never shared a single word. And yet, he knew details about my life that no stranger should. I swallowed hard, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why?" His smile widened. I was waiting for the right moment to introduce myself. My pulse pounded in my ears. I wanted to believe he was just some lonely guy who had built up an obsession in his head, but then he said something that made my blood run cold. "I was planning to propose to you next month, on my birthday." My breath caught in my throat. I almost laughed, because surely, this was a joke. We had never spoken before. Never exchanged more than a passing glance. But the way he said it, calm, assured, as if this was something preordained, sent ice through my veins. I took a step back, trying to regain control of the situation. "Look, I think you've got the wrong idea." His expression darkened. "You're thinking about leaving Hendrick's Tavern, aren't you?" I froze. I had mentioned it in passing to a coworker once or twice, but that was it. How did he know? "Well," he continued, swirling the drink in his hand, "don't go anywhere I can't find you. The escape. My body screamed at me to run, but I forced myself to stay composed. I mumbled an excuse, something about needing to use the restroom, and slipped into the crowd. My heart pounded as I pushed past bodies, heading straight for the exit. I didn't look back. That night, I barely slept. Every creak in my apartment sent me into a panic. Every shadow outside my window made my skin crawl. I started checking over my shoulder more, watching the faces in the crowd, wondering if he was still out there, still watching. When I went back to work the next day, I told my manager everything. They brushed it off. "He's harmless," they said, waving a dismissive hand. "Regulars get too attached sometimes. It happens." I wanted to argue, wanted to tell them that this was different, that it wasn't just some lonely guy with a crush. But I knew it wouldn't matter. To them, I was just another server. Just another girl with a story they wouldn't believe. A few months later, the bar shut down due to citywide restrictions. I never went back. Never saw him again. But sometimes, late at night, I still think about him. About his calm, unwavering stare. About how he had been watching me for years without me ever knowing. About how, somewhere out there, he might still be waiting. And worst of all, I'll never know how much he really saw. Or how much he still sees. I never liked camping. Something about being isolated in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by nothing but trees and darkness, always made my skin crawl. But my best friend, Jess, loved it, and after weeks of her begging, I finally agreed to a weekend trip with her family. If only I had known what was waiting for us in the woods. The campground wasn't large, just a small collection of cabins and tents clustered near a murky lake. We arrived in the late afternoon, and as the sun dipped below the treetops, a chill settled in the air. Jess's parents set up the tent while we explored, laughing and daring each other to step deeper into the looming trees. I kept feeling like someone was watching us, but every time I turned around, there was nothing there. That night, the unease settled deep in my stomach. I lay awake in the tent, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the forest. The distant hoot of an owl. The rustling of wind through the branches. Then something else, a faint, deliberate crunch of leaves. Footsteps. I held my breath and turned to Jess, but she was fast asleep. The sound moved closer, slow and measured, circling the tent. My heartbeat pounded in my ears as I strained to listen. After what felt like an eternity, the steps faded into the night, leaving me shaken and wide-eyed until dawn. The next day, we tried to enjoy ourselves, swimming in the lake and roasting marshmallows by the fire. Jess teased me for being on edge, but I couldn't shake the eerie feeling from the night before. It only got worse when we headed to the camp's shared bathroom facility that evening. The showers were in a small, dimly lit building at the edge of the campground. The air was thick with steam and the scent of mildew. Each stall had a flimsy plastic curtain, and beneath them, a gap wide enough to see someone's feet. Jess and I took separate stalls, and as the water poured down, I finally started to relax. But then, just as I was rinsing the soap from my hair, I heard it, a faint, breathy chuckle. At first, I thought it was Jess messing with me. "Very funny," I called out. Silence. Then another laugh, low and cruel, much closer this time. A sickening chill crawled up my spine. I glanced down and felt my stomach drop. There, just beyond the shower's edge, a pair of feet. Filthy, bare feet. My breath caught in my throat. They didn't move. They just stood there, waiting. I tried to scream, but before I could, the feet shifted, and then, slowly, something even worse. A head appeared beneath the stall. A face, twisted in a wide, leering grin, eyes locked onto mine. I shrieked, stumbling back and yanking the curtain aside. Jess's stall was empty. She had finished and left without realizing I was in danger. I grabbed my towel and bolted, my pulse hammering as I ran half-dressed through the night. I crashed into Jess's dad outside our tent, sobbing, barely able to explain what had happened. His expression darkened as he grabbed a flashlight and stalked toward the showers. Minutes later, a shout rang out, followed by frantic footsteps. The figure tore through the camp, sprinting toward the trees, but Jess's dad was right behind him. He never caught the guy. The police came, but there was nothing to go on, just a vague description of a man with wild eyes and a predatory smile. The camp manager later admitted there had been similar reports in the past. Girls who had seen strange shadows outside their tents. Unexplained noises in the dead of night. Whoever he wasn't a camper. He wasn't supposed to be there. And worst of all, he had been watching. Waiting. And that night, he finally got close enough to see me scream. I was exhausted, my mind preoccupied with the day's events as I walked toward the entrance of my building. The cold evening air nipped at my skin, and I quickened my pace, eager to get inside. That's when I heard a voice. Hello. It was soft but deliberate. I turned my head slightly and saw a woman standing just outside the door. I had seen her before, maybe in passing, but I had never spoken to her. There was something odd about the way she stood, like she had been waiting for me. Being polite, I nodded and replied, "Hey," before reaching for the door handle. "How's your weekend going?" she asked quickly, before I could disappear inside. The question caught me off guard, but it seemed harmless enough. Just small talk, I thought. "It's been good," I said. "Just busy." "Where do you work?" she asked immediately. Something about the way she asked, the abruptness of it, made me hesitate. Still, I answered vaguely, keeping my tone casual. "Oh, just a place nearby." She stared at me, her eyes locked onto mine. "How long have you lived here?" I shifted on my feet, feeling an unease creep into my stomach. The way she spoke was off, too direct, too fast, as if she were checking off a list of things she needed to know. I gave her a non-committal answer, hoping she would take the hint that I wasn't in the mood to chat. But she didn't. Instead, she took a step closer. "No one ever helps me," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "No one ever offers. My whole life, no one has ever cared." A strange tension thickened the air between us. I opened my mouth to respond, but what do you say to something like that? Before I could think of anything, she continued, her voice growing more desperate. "I'm a good person," she insisted. "I just want to do fun things. But no one ever invites me. No one ever asks me to join them." I stammered something, an awkward acknowledgement, an attempt to steer the conversation away, but she wasn't listening. Her eyes bore into mine, unblinking, her breath shallow. She took another step forward, effectively pinning me against the door. A sharp, instinctive panic prickled at the back of my neck. The hallway behind the door was empty. No one was coming. It was just her and me in the dimly lit entryway, and I realized, for the first time, how quiet it was. The seconds stretched uncomfortably as I struggled to think of a way to end the conversation without making things worse. Just then, the door swung open. "There you are," my building superintendent said, her voice firm but casual. "I need you for a second." Relief washed over me. I seized the opportunity, murmured a quick excuse, and stepped past the woman without looking back. Once we were inside, my super placed a hand on my arm and said in a low voice, "Don't talk to her again." I blinked, startled. "Why?" She sighed, glancing toward the door before looking back at me. "Just trust me. Avoid her." I wanted to argue. Maybe she was just lonely, just socially awkward. Maybe she didn't know how to interact with people in a way that wasn't unsettling. I had worked with people like that before. I didn't want to assume the worst. But as the night wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The way she had watched me, as if she was studying me. The way she had stood, as if she had been waiting. The way she had spoken, her words spilling out like rehearsed lines from a conversation she had played out in her mind over and over. Hours later, I still felt that tight knot of unease in my stomach. My gut was screaming at me, and I've learned that gut instincts exist for a reason. I don't know what her story is. I don't know what she wants. But something tells me this wasn't just a random encounter. And something deep inside me whispers that she'll be waiting for me again.